since I'd been through the process before, I had marked about 15 minutes for the sum total of the transaction to take place. A friend of mine and I were together on our way to lunch, and I told him it would only be about 15, 20 minutes if he didn't mind waiting, and he did, so he was waiting for me. I went into the bank and got the same nice woman that I normally deal with, and we went into her office, just small talking as she was preparing the wire, and I was presenting the information for her. And she started going through the normal litany of questions that we have to go through when we do our wires. But then when she found out that it was a precious metal dealer that I was sending money to, she immediately began to ask questions whether or not I really knew who you were, how I knew you, whether I'd spoken with you, and then the question that really made me uncomfortable. And because we have such a nice relationship and it's someone that I see on a regular basis and we have such cordial conversation, I almost answered the question. And the question was, what do you plan to do with these metals and where do you plan to keep them? And I just found that question, those two questions, to be really disconcerting. And of course I demurred, but it just made me feel really uncomfortable. We got through all of that, but it took much longer, over a half hour, to my friend's chagrin, of course. Once I got into the car, I had the signed wire receipt from the bank, and we were on our way, my friend and I. And that's when I received an additional call from another gal at the bank indicating that they hadn't received quite enough information yet and they needed to ask me a few more questions. And that's when they started to ask me questions. Some of the questions were the same. Some of the questions were the same, like, how do you know the person? Have you spoken with the person? Of course, that was frustrating to me because I'd already answered those questions. But then they began to ask me, had I read Google reviews? And then they began to read or try to find negative reviews to read to me to ask if I had heard these and whether I was familiar with these people's experiences. And it was, fortunately, the conversation took place on speakerphone. And so my friend was able to hear this line of questioning. When we finally did get off the phone, he looked at me and he said, I just can't believe I heard that. I just can't believe that happened. And of course, when I shared the story with my wife, the first conversation we had was, how much money do we feel safe keeping in the bank right now? And it's an extraordinary question that I never would have thought that I'd be having with my wife. But it led us into, well, not only, it led me into another order with you, if you remember. But even more prescient was this question of, oh my goodness, we just don't feel confident. We don't feel confident about what's happening there. And this was a small regional bank. So we felt if it's happening here at a small regional bank, then we're quite confident that that's behavior that's been learned from larger banks. And so when you asked me if I was willing to tell the story, I was really grateful that you asked because I would want to know. And it's the kind of story that encourages you to get up on the rooftops and try to tell as many people as you can, knowing that it's, I mean, quite frankly, it seems so outrageous that I don't expect everyone to believe it, but it really shot a warning shot across the bow for my wife and I. And for the first time, we are truly reevaluating how we're structuring where we keep our earned income. And I suppose that, hopefully this conversation, this platform will provide that question for others to ponder with their loved ones. But it's real. It happened to us. It happened to me this way that I said. And I just feel like it's behavior that indicates where we're headed.
Are you a service-based business that's trying to get new clients and new customers using Facebook, LinkedIn? Yep, there's two main aspects of that, and it's funny because the title of our platform is Liberty and Finance. So if you take that one at a time, liberty, freedom, we speak with constitutional attorneys on a recurring basis, Dr. Edwin Vieira, and John Whitehead, among others. And this is a question, so about the restriction on your access to those funds. You know, we have this notion in our minds that that's my money. I was trusting you to store it for me and pay me some interest on it, hopefully, and process transactions at my request. And then what you encountered was, well, you're gonna have to go through certain hoops, certain gates, certain things that we have control over, opening or closing those gates, and you don't have control over it. So in other words, restricting access to your own funds based on acceptable answers to certain questions, so that there's several aspects of that. One is intrusion of privacy. Another one is trespassing on your ownership, your rightful sovereign ownership of that so-called money, and on down the list it goes. All, of course, for your own good, or the good of the bank, or the good of the people, or whatever. But the point is that it was a trespass on your privacy and on your freedom. You had restricted access, and you didn't know if you were going to be granted access, and you had to answer, probing, inappropriate questions to even try to get through that. So that's one thing, one big concern, and that's happening, undeniable. It happened to you. It's happening to other people. So that's a valid concern for the future. Is that what our future is going to look like? Is, like Oliver Twist, please, sir, may I have some more soup? Are we going to be begging for access to our own funds that were the fruits of our labor? Secondly, was the financial aspect of that, which is counterparty risk.
Once you have a personal anecdote to share, then what happens is you really are led into the rabbit hole. And once you peer inside, if you have the courage to peer inside, then what is being observed right now is undeniable. And in my opinion, and I'm just a mere pedestrian, but in my opinion, what's observable right now should concern us all about the fragility of our financial system and what we've all really without choice have been a part of for so long, certainly my whole life. But I do see that we're now coming to a bottleneck that I don't see a way out, and I can no longer trust what's being told to me about how we're going to get out of it.
If there is more coverage, the U.S. government could say, hey, we're not going to deal with Russia and we got to really do this ourselves. China's really doing that route, not relying on Russia too much for the most part for a lot of their parts and a lot of their reactors. So what it really is saying is we could see this added to the critical mineral list very soon, uranium, and then the government could put a lot more money and a lot more focus on uranium because it is a critical mineral, no doubt, because of its use in national defense, national security, and it's also medical use. So it's not just for fuel, for these plants.
Uranium, is there a chance we could run out there?
So uranium is found everywhere, including in the U.S. But again, with raw materials, it's all about getting it out of the ground and then the multi-step process before it actually ends up in that reactor. And so last year, about 440 reactors around the world used roughly 180 million pounds of uranium, but we only mined 130 million pounds. So that is part of the bull case here, which is that the market is in deficit. Right now, we're still working our way through supplies after the Fukushima disaster cooled the uranium and nuclear market broadly. But going forward, that is going to start catching up with more and more demand. And as of right now, we're not seeing a lot of new supply come online.
This is such a fascinating story. Pippa Stevens, thanks for bringing.
So my response to this is I really do believe they're not accounting for, there's a lot more players. The demand is going to be a lot higher coming in. It's over 205 million pounds. So, and it's over 205 million pounds, I believe. So what we're seeing, not only these reactors being restarted in record numbers across the world, we're seeing this MOX fuel issues in Japan, and we're seeing France turn back to traditional fuel. So these long-term contracts that all these utilities relied on, they might, even if they have them, want to hedge with some new, possible contracts. So all of this is really happening at the same time. Here's another one by Pippa Stevens. This was really about, all uranium as well.
Hey, Tyler. Oil erased early losses, making back some of yesterday's decline that saw U.S. oil settle at its lowest level since January. Brent crude is still holding below $90 right now, with WTI right around $83.50. Natural gas prices also advancing. While they've pulled back, they remain sharply higher on the year. Platts Analytics estimating that global oil demand from gas to oil switching could
You have to eat some of those peaches, Claudia. Don't want to go bad. Eat them. I'm more of a plum person myself.
You look better though.
Well, give it time. They grind you down. Have you pet the perfect dog yet?
Today was another interesting day. Looks like I got caught up in this chop. I really thought this was going to drop hard after it had this big drop. I thought, oh, there's another one right behind it, and I was totally wrong. And what I should have done is, after it went in my favor so much here and here, I should have just gotten out, but instead I tried to hold for bigger position. And then as soon as I saw it do this, that should have been enough for me to get out and think of something better. And then I did not. So didn't take those very subtle things. That's actually a problem that I've been working on, which is my ability to notice the change in market sentiment on a very short-term basis. And I've gotten better at that. Actually, I think I did that pretty well today. You can see here, it started bumping off here. I ended up going along in the dome on what was that, 96.75. So let's see, where is 96.75? So really close, really close. Actually, it was not a bad play there. The tough part was sitting in it. So what actually I did is I just left the room, and it came down super hard, almost to the tune of 10 points, and then bounced up. I kind of expected that because of seeing some of these movements. It's rollover. I'm thinking maybe that's part of the reason. But if you look at if you look at where the volume profile is and the VPOC, it actually is in a place where I'm going to bring my account over. It's actually in a place where I thought would be a really great place to take profits. So getting rid of these two guys, you can see the VPOC right here. So I thought, okay, it's touched once, it's touched twice, then bounced off. We're getting in here at 96.75. I'm relatively close here. Let's just let this motherfucker ride, because I was so annoyed about losing those last trade or two trades or whatever it was. And so I said, let's just let this thing go. I think if it goes, because market structurally speaking, we opened up and then price came all the way back down to test a level. Well, it tested this level and it tested it twice. And because it's coming off, market structurally speaking, it should come back to the VPOC, possibly higher. And I thought it could go higher, but I'm going to be out by then. So I was fully in and fully out in two different trades, which I think is really, really good execution. It was hard to stay in. That's why I just left my computer. Sometimes that can backfire, but a lot of times it helps me get a lot more alpha than I would just sitting here watching every little thing. Because had I been watching every little thing and I had to go through this again, then I probably just would have gotten out and basically for maybe even a loss. So that really worked out. And again, I'm trying to take it in front of these prior levels. There could be sellers here. And I thought, okay, VPOC, great solid area. Let's take profit right there. That was at the 10. So that was about right here. I was trying to take profit, but it was kind of lagging. And I thought, you know what? I'm not going to let 3-5 ticks ruin my day. So I took profit. So the thing that really led to my success today was my ability to be patient, not overtrade, but overtrading almost got me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go home for the day, and I'm going to live to trade another day.